Have you ever wanted to learn how to nature journal? Well, now is your chance. Now, this is part 2 of my interview with Muir Laws, also known as Jack. In part 1, he describes the major tenets of nature journaling. And now in this, he is going to demonstrate how to actually nature journal. I am Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s all the way down to elementary age and everything in between. Welcome to the School to Homeschool podcast. So let's jump right in with Jack Laws.
So what I do is I try to keep a number of objects around the house that someday I'd like to take a closer look at this. So, we have the old sort of idea of the cabinet of curiosities. What I have is a sort of a wall of little wonders. And I'm hiking down a trail, I pick up something like, oh, that's weird, stick it in my pocket. And then someday on a snow day, right, I can pull that out and play with it. And what I do is I use these as sort of tools to kind of get myself to think more. And also, part of it's practicing drawing. I'll be making some drawings. The more you draw, the better you get at drawing. So if you do that on a regular basis, you get better at drawing. But I like to think of it as sort of a thinking exercise. So I've got, my friend recently went to the islands of Vanuatu and brought back this little shell that has been partially eroded, and so it was broken by the surf and waves. And I thought to myself, I would love to kind of explore that. And I'm going to use, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, I'm going to use words, pictures, and numbers, and I'm going to see what happens. So this isn't scripted. I don't know where this is going.
Okay.
But let's just take a look at what this process looks like when we start to play.
Hooray.
So I've got a little journal here. And I am going to... I was just at a school today with a bunch of children, and we were looking at the tree that is in front of the school and trying to use that as a prompt for getting ourselves curious.
That is so fun.
And there I go. So, me being dyslexic, I often am kind of intimidated by initially by words. I know that my brain will really benefit from using the words, but I often start in my comfort zone by drawing a picture. Here what I've done is I've just taken this shell, I put it down on top of my piece of paper, and I'm tracing around it. Help me kind of get the general shape. All right. And then what it seems to have this sort of central axis through it. I'm seeing this set of interlocking cones. So I'm going to draw in that central axis, kind of coming from down here in this corner to, if I extend that up, to kind of up in here. And I'm loosely drawing this on my piece of paper with a colored pencil. And what I will end up doing is drawing over that with a pen. So I should give folks a warning. Sometimes when I am drawing, because it takes part of your brain, you can actually see, it's kind of interesting because you can see cognitive load happen. If you listen to me, you'll hear me pause while I talk, sometimes while I'm drawing, because my brain can't do two things at the same time. And other times you'll see me stop drawing in order to be able to talk. So it's kind of fun to watch cognitive load happening real time.
My mom always said, you are not allowed to talk while you're doing your chores because you stop doing all of them. So that was the rule. It was a rule in my house. I was not allowed to talk if I was doing chores. So.
Oh, that's fun. So I'm kind of I'm just sort of loosely blocking in a very scribbly drawing the general shape that I'm seeing. And then I can refine that a little bit, and then I will kind of come back and draw over that with a bold pen line. I like to make an analogy to this to writing a paper, where first you write an outline, and then on that you get to sort of figure out roughly where you're going, and then from that you can write your sort of the format your paragraphs, and then at the end you come by with sort of fine detail and work on your spelling and punctuation and kind of crisp everything up. Drawing's very much the same way. So I will often, this is sort of, I've already kind of created a general outline. I'm now essentially giving myself a little bit more of the paragraph structure and detail. And then I will come by in a moment and work on the spelling. Here I'm just looking at how big are these different parts, how do they overlap or not overlap. Have I made one part too big? And that kind of works for me. Again, I started with tracing, so you might say, isn't that cheating? But there's no cheating in this. It's just, I want to pay attention to this object. Mm-hmm. And what can I learn from the object? What can the object teach me about the natural world?
Which I think it's funny that we do that to ourselves. We'll make rules, arbitrary rules. Like my daughter has a goal to read 100 books this year. And she said, I'm behind on my goal. And I said, well, then read a shorter book. She's like, am I allowed to do that? And I said, well, who said? I mean, it's your goal. And she's like, oh, I didn't think that. I made a rule. I unintentionally made a rule. So I love that you're like, oh, it's not cheating.
Yeah. This is for you. And so now what I want to do as I'm doing this is I also want to start, really kind of getting myself curious. These nested cones are beautiful.
Yes, they are.
And it makes this for a very interesting geometric pattern. I remember, I'm doing it reminds me of. I remember a long time ago, my friend Joe told me that all of these snails and sort of twisted spiral shells, there were three different sort of things that you could tweak on how to make a shell, and by changing these parameters it would change the shape of the shell. So one was the degree to which it is kind of growing off center. One was how fast the aperture is growing. What was the third? So this makes me my brain is kind of going back to what Joe said about these different shapes. And I haven't, what's neat is I haven't thought about Joe in a while, which makes me want to call up my old coworker Joe. See, that's kind of a neat thing about it reminds me of, is that you pay attention to where your brain goes. I haven't thought about Joe for a while, but he was a really brilliant guy. And what's he doing right now? So, after our call here, I think I'm going to call Joe.
Get reconnected. I love that.
The it reminds me of can take you all sorts of places. So now I'm thinking about kind of the ecology of this little shell. Like, who was this little creature?
So I was just thinking as you were drawing that, I thought, what lived inside of that little thing?
Yes. And what would sort of the experience of being this little beastie be? Can you imagine your life being always inside this shell, but also having that security and that protection? Or what is this a metaphor for? There's that wonderful poem about the chambered nautilus, where observing the chambered nautilus, gets the poet thinking in all sorts of interesting metaphoric ways. What is this for me? How can I use this? I can think metaphorically about this it reminds me of. And see where that takes my brain. Now, a lot of people, when they're doing this, they would start to get gripped when part of the drawing doesn't look the way they wanted it to. And that happens to everybody. Happens to me too. There will be parts that are more accurate, parts that are less accurate, and that's okay. That's just part of the nature of doing this. And if you get yourself all stressed out about sort of making kind of one of those very human, happen all the time, sort of process mistakes, then you make it less likely that you'll ever do this again. And so that I don't kind of turn myself off to it, I'm aware when my brain starts to kind of really beat me up about having to be perfect. And when that happens, you want to intentionally move the goalpost for yourself. Remember, this isn't about making a pretty picture. If you want to make pretty pictures, here's the secret. It's really straightforward. Make lots of pictures. Right? Make lots of pictures. And if you make lots of pictures, you'll make some pretty pictures. And some of them won't be. But it's a numbers game. You have to kind of go through a bunch of these pictures to get them to start to kind of come out pretty. But another thing that you can do is just make sure your brain knows, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And there's a tendency for us to kind of think that, the reason I'm doing this is I want to make a pretty picture. And if I make that my goal, then it's really easy for me to get gripped about something not being a pretty picture. But if instead I say to myself, why am I doing this? The reason I'm doing this is because I want to get myself to look more carefully at this little shell. I've got the daylight starting to creep across my board here. Then I'll show you a wonderful way to kind of get the pressure off of the drawing. Is to say, I want to start just writing all over the page as well. If it's just a drawing, it feels like an art project. If it is a drawing and writing, then my brain goes like, you're taking notes about something.
And then it's okay that if it's not a pretty picture.
That's right. And so over here is the axis. Right? Now, I just heard my other daughter come home, so I'm going to pause this for just a moment. I'm going to run over and welcome her and give her a kiss and tell her I love her. And then I will be right back.
Sounds good. Don't forget to show her where the snacks are.
Snacks are important.
Yes, they are.
I am going to put up, see if we can put up a piece of cardboard here to block that light. Not very well. Eventually in my studio here I'm going to get I think I need to get some curtains for when I do an afternoon discussion. We'll just have to make do with the light coming across here. I hope that doesn't bother you.
Not at all. Well, as I was getting curious, actually, I'm like, look at how much the shadow is cast on that shell against the picture.
Oh, yeah.
So, because it was a different shadow earlier.
And it's neat to see how fast that's changing.
And it changed fast.
the so now I want to interlocking cones. And it's neat to sort of see how these cones then are expressed on the outside. Interlocking cones make ridges on back of cone. It would be interesting to figure out sort of mathematically what the ratio is. If you could take one of these and slice it straight in half, what is the ratio of growth one cone to the next? Like, could you predict what the size of the next cone would be from these? Is it linear? Is the relative proportions of this one to this one the same as this one to this one as this one to this one, or is there some sort of a function going on where that ratio is changing between these? That would be kind of a cool thing to be able to graph. I can't really do that on this because I would have to kind of get in here and kind of grind this away till I had a perfect kind of half there. And yeah, we'd want to do it sort of up to this ridges. I don't think can't kind of do that from this, but that would be fun to see. So what I've done is I've written a question on my page. So things that I notice, I wonder. It reminds me of the poem Chambered Nautilus. And I'm going to actually give myself what I call a to-do box here, a little box that I can check off to remind myself that what I want to do after this is to go find that poem again and read the Chambered Nautilus. Oh yeah, look at now. There's this whole.
Could you put that poem in your nature journal?
Absolutely. And sort of transcribing quotes or poems that particularly move you, or I might find a phrase from it. Actually, let's since we're here, let's walk across the room and pull a book off the shelf. And where is that? I know it is in. It was a first poetry book that I had when I was a kid. I found it. It was this one, 101 Famous Poems, and I know the Chambered Nautilus is in here. So I am going to Chambered Nautilus, Oliver Wendell Holmes, page 13. And so maybe I can put in something from that. Hey, Oliver. Year after year beheld in silent toil that spreads this lustrous coil. Still as the spiral grew, he left the past year's dwelling for a new. So in a Chambered Nautilus, there are these little sections as it grows. This one doesn't have that. stole with soft step its shining archway through, built up its idle doors, stretched in his last found home, and knew the old no more. I'm going to go just write, year after year beheld the silent toil that spread this lustrous coil.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. Now, some people can do calligraphy. I can't, so I'm just going to write it in. I'm going to put cursive, though, because that'll just hold it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's kind of fun for me is I am dyslexic. And so when I look at a word that I am copying, sometimes it changes around for me. And so very often my spelling is not, even though the word is right in front of me, mm-hmm. that it comes out in some other way. And I've just sort of learned to make peace with that, that I've got this kind of fun dyslexic brain that that does things in its own way. And initially that was really frustrating for me. I wanted to have a brain like all the rest of the kids that didn't have trouble with spelling. And now I wouldn't give up this little dyslexic brain for the world, because it does things in a way that is unexpected. Mm-hmm. And some things are harder for me, but because I then have had to work hard in those things, in those areas, it's opened up other doors for me. And the person who I am is partly because I have a challenge with spelling. I'm going to reach down here and grab a ruler. And because maybe I can do a little bit of measurement with this little structure here. Wouldn't it be interesting if I could figure out some kind of a mathematical relationship that I could graph just in these little parts here. Oh, there's my ruler. And so I'm going to roughly, where would I start? Okay, I'm going to start these things from kind of where the top edge of this would be, and then where are you going to end? Oh, but where would I end? Oh, that's going to be hard to say. I'd really just be... oh, yeah, that... It's hard without kind of slicing down into this to know where to end the next measurement. I can't just kind of go with these things because where I see these little kind of grooves here, because that just is where this thing happened to kind of break and erode, and that's going to be just randomly different on different ones. Ooh. But let's get an overall shell length. I like to use the metric system. There I am on the inches side. Something felt wrong. It's about 10 centimeters by a long ways. About 10 by 5. And so I am going to, long axis is 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters. And how big could this species grow? How did you look? It reminds me of... Oh, it reminds me of nested Russian dolls.
Oh, yes, it does. I just got some raw nesting dolls that are just plain that you can paint.
Oh, that's fun.
And so a couple of my kids and I are going to do that is paint them and turn them into something delightful.
Reminds me of one of those spiral slides. So sometimes it reminds me of our scientific things. Here it's more poetic and playful. It's interesting to see which ways things will go. What I can do is I can use my observations. Am I putting observations down here? These parts are thin. Oh, wouldn't it be interesting to look at the thickness of the shell as you go down these parts? Again, if you had one of these shells and you could cleanly cut it, then you could, you can measure how the thickness changed. Because out here where this part is, that's feeling really beefy. Mm-hmm. I can see these parts in here are very thin. How does shell thickness change? I like to put in a little delta change system symbol for change. That's kind of fun.
That is fun.
And how do you spell Oliver's last name? Holmes. All right. That's kind of fun. I love your suggestion of kind of transcribing some of that poem into here. You can bring into your journaling whatever is you, whatever is inspiring you. I really like to kind of go back to this. I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. I've got my words, pictures, numbers. And then what I can do is I like to think of what is my big takeaway from this? What do I want to do next? One thing I want to do is to be on the lookout for, I'd love to find a shell and some way of smoothly cutting one exactly in half. So I'm going to say, again, another little to-do box. Now I can check off this to-do box because I have already checked out the chambered nautilus. But I'm going to give myself another little thing to do. Look for ways to cut and expose a spiral shell. Spiral shell that that I can measure. Right.
Look how beautiful all of that is.
And so so this little shell has then kind of given me, it's now sort of prompted me to kind of go into the next investigation. And it's fun to kind of get all your thinking out in one place. Let's put the date on March 10th. Darren's shell from Vanuatu. Not sure on the spelling of that either. For me, kind of actually having spelling mistakes is kind of, it's my fingerprint.
I love it. It's character.
Yeah. So, and if I limited myself to only writing words that I could spell because I was afraid of spelling, it would really lock up my ability to think with words on paper. Mm-hmm. Similarly, if I'm thinking to myself like, oh, that'd be hard to draw, I don't know if I could make a pretty picture of that. That's going to prevent me from drawing pictures or making diagrams.
Yeah.
So rather than angsting about those things, think of this as a book for you to be, this is your thinking book. This is your brain on paper. And it's not about how it looks or how it's spelled. It's about, can you make connections? Can you think more deeply? Like, what was the last time I looked at chambered nautilus? Yeah. It's been a while. And this little moment inspired me to go do that. That's wonderful.
Love that.
And at the end of this, I get to call Joe. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put that down as a to-do on here. Otherwise, I might forget it and just remember only to change the burr feeder. So, I'll call Joe.
Jack, thank you so much. I know you've got a time constraint today. I appreciate so much you taking the time to come and share with us your knowledge about nature journaling and so many other wonderful things. So
it was fun to do some homeschooling with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Mamas and papas, grandmas and grandpas, you're doing better than you think you are. Yeah. You've got this. We'll talk next week.
Like, you think I'm like, if I do it wrong, my kid's going to be broken. It's easier just to have somebody else take. You love and you care. You're here because you love and you care. And with that as the foundation for every step you take forward, it's going to turn out okay. It's going to turn out more than okay. It's going to be really good. You can absolutely do this. And I also want to say that what you're doing is beautiful. And what you're doing is also brave. Most people, it's scary to take on that responsibility. Yeah. It's really scary. But with that foundation of love, you are going to be guided to do something wonderful. Because you are paying deep attention to your child will know every day of their life going forward that they are always loved by you. It's the strength of that attention. And homeschooling takes profound, deliberate, sustained attention. And that's love.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm so honored to have been here. And if my work can be of help to any of your listeners, they can find me at johnmuirlaws.com. Perfect. All my contact information is there. There's also hundreds of hours of tutorials and resources for families or individuals that want to do this. I wrote a book on how to teach nature journaling. The entire thing is free as a download that anybody can make. from anywhere in the world.
I love that.
I hope that these resources are really helpful to you.
It's been so beautiful, and like I said, it's been an honor, and thank you. And I will include everything in the show notes for the everybody who wants. We'll have your website. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna even put Mind Traps, a link to Mind Traps, so they can find the pick up a set of cards themselves.
My daughters love those. Like, Dad, let's do a mind trap. I mean, like, just think every morning you're kind of trying to get yourself to think laterally.
Yeah.
That's fun.
That is fun. So, well, thank you again. And I have a great afternoon. And thank you for sharing your talents with us so much.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here with you.